The voice spoke in a language Oti didn't understand. Its tone cold and sharp, filled with ancient malice. His breath caught in his throat, and his feet froze to the ground. "Why do you call us, child?" The voice hissed, its words wrapping around him like a tightening coil. In the village of Maki, nestled deep within the heart of the forest, there were many traditions, but one stood out above the rest. Never whistle after sunset, never whistle at night. The elders spoke of it in hushed tones, warning the children and newcomers alike. Whistling at night was said to call the spirit of the forest, creatures both ancient and malevolent, who would come out from their hiding places to punish those who dared to break the rule. Oti, a young boy with a curious spirit and a heart that often defied authority, had grown up hearing these stories. His grandfather, a wise man with silver hair and eyes like the storm, had warned him time and time again. The forest listens, Oti. Never whistle after dark. But Oti, always a skeptic, dismissed the warnings as old superstitions, tales made up by the elders to keep the children in line. He found the idea of the forest spirits laughable, a relic of a past too steep in fear and misery. The night was no different from the day, he believed. The world was governed by logic, not ancient myth. One evening, Oti sat outside the small cottage he shared with his grandfather. The air was cool and the scent of pine and damp earth filled the air. The village was quiet. The only sound was the gentle rustling of leaves. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, and the stars were beginning to twinkle. But Oti was restless. He felt a playful energy rising in his chest. Oti raised his lips and let out a short, high-pitched whistle, a sharp, clear sound that broke the silence of the night. He grinned, feeling a sense of exhilaration, as he had just proven that the old tales were nothing more than fear-based fables. But as the last note of the whistle echoed into the trees, something changed. The air grew colder, the night deepened unnaturally, and a hush fell over the forest. Oti's smile faltered, a prickling sensation running down his spine. The rustling of leaves grew louder, more frantic, as if something unseen was stirring within the shadows. He stood up, eyes wide, his heart beginning to pound in his chest. The wind began to howl, and the trees seemed to bend towards him, their branches reaching like fingers. The light from the cottage flickered, casting strange, jittery shadows on the ground. Then he heard it, a low guttural sound, a whispering voice as if the very earth itself was speaking. It was distant at first, a soft murmur, but then it grew louder, closer. The voice spoke in a language Oti didn't understand, its tone cold and sharp, filled with ancient malice. His breath caught in his throat and his feet froze to the ground. "Why do you call us, child?" The voice hissed, its words wrapping around him like a tightening coil. Oti's eyes widened in terror. He wanted to scream, to run back inside the house, but his leg wouldn't move. His grandfather's warning flashed in his mind. "The spirit, Oti, you should never have whistled at night." The ground beneath his feet trembled, and Oti felt a chill unlike any he had ever known. The whispering voices seemed to grow into a chorus, a cacophony of air sounds filling the air. He turned towards the cottage, but before he could take a step, the darkness in front of him deepened. From the shadows emerged a figure, a tall, thin-shaped, cloaked in darkness, its features hidden beneath a hood. The air around it shimmered as if reality itself was bending. Oti could feel its presence, its eyes, if it had any, burning into his very soul. The figure stepped forward, its feet never seeming to touch the ground. "You have disturbed us," it said, its voice echoing through the night, "and for that you will pay the price." Terror gripped Oti's heart. He wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but the words caught in his throat. The figure raised one long skeletal hand, and Oti's body stiffened, as if an invisible force had seized him. He could not move, he could not speak. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him like a storm, and in the midst of the chaos, Oti saw the eyes, hundreds of them glowing in the dark. Eyes that watched from the trees, from the ground, from the sky, eyes that belonged to the spirit of the forest. His mind raced, but it was too late. The figure's hand came down, and the ground beneath him cracked open, swallowing him. He felt himself being pulled into the earth, deeper and deeper, as the voices of the forest rang in his ears. The last thing he saw was the shadowed form of his grandfather, standing in the doorway, his face pale and stricken with horror as the night consumed Oti completely. The next morning, the villagers awoke to find Oti's grandfather sitting alone on the porch, his hand folded in his lap, staring into the forest with hollow eyes. He had heard the whispers too. He saw the shadows, but it was too late. Oti was never seen again. The elders gathered around the forest edge, murmuring prayers and incantations to appease the spirits. They knew the price of disobedience, and they knew the spirits would not show mercy. The children were warned once more, their eyes wide with fear as they listened to the stories of the boy who had whistled at night and paid the ultimate price. And from that day forward, no one in the land of Maki ever dared to whistle after dark again. For in the silence of the night, the forest listens. Hope you enjoyed this story. See you in my next story.